Hello and welcome back to Typical City. Happy New Year, everybody. I hope you had a wonderful time celebrating the end of 2023, because what a year that has been for Manchester City fans. It's been an incredible year. Incredible. One that still hasn't really fully sank in yet. I still quite can't believe it. I'm looking at it thinking, how? How did we do all that in one calendar year? It's truly remarkable for Manchester City as a football club. It's been an astounding 365 days. It really has. Incredible stuff from Manchester City. I also wanted to say a big thank you to those of you that showed sympathy towards me for being ill the last couple of days. I'm still not completely 100%. I'm okay. Still got a few razor blades shredding my throat to bits, which isn't quite pleasant. There might be some dodgy editing in this video just to cut out any potential coughing fits that I have throughout this video. But those of you that commented on the community post to wish me well, and I mean, it sounded like I was dying. Really, some of the nice words that you all wrote was very kind, and I really appreciate that. But it was just some sort of bug that's going around. I don't know what it is, but I'm all right now. I'm back to making videos at least, and apologies for missing the Sheffield United game as well, because that was a really convincing performance. Again, a little bit lackluster in the first half, but in terms of possession and control, probably the most dominant performance we've seen this season. I know 2-0 doesn't quite reflect that dominance. I would have liked to have seen 3 or 4 more, well, it's not more, but 3 or 4 goals in total during that game, and it was a really convincing performance from Manchester City in terms of possession. Just chance creations in the first half wasn't quite as high, but still, the second half was just absolute masterclass. In terms of, I mean, it looked like men against boys, and hopefully now we can see that going forward for the rest of 2024. But what this video is intended to do is sort of like a quick fire review of 2023, have a look back and remind ourselves of what was achieved, not just in the sense of how incredible it was. Just, I mean, right now, like I said, it hasn't sunk in yet. I don't feel 2023 actually happened, because it's so unfathomable to the average football fan to even dare to dream of having a season like that. You split those trophies up, the 5 trophies that we achieved in 2023. Normally, most football, even the biggest clubs in the world, would expect to spread that over 2 or 3 seasons. We did it in one calendar year. One calendar year is just an absolute astounding achievement. Incredible from Manchester City Football Club. It really is. And not just because of that factor and the fact that in 5 years we'll look back at it, and 10 years and decades further down the line, and no one will have achieved, I almost can guarantee that no one will have achieved what we did in 2023. And in 2 decades time, 3 decades time, we'll look back at this calendar year of 2023 and go, right, now, even our rival fans, give them 10 years, they'll go, okay, I get it. What they did in that season on the pitch, who's gonna emulate that? Who's gonna come close to even achieving that? I mean, to even get 4 in a calendar year is incredible. We've done that before, by the way, with like I say, like, oh yeah, this is the one-off. No, we got a domestic quadruple, didn't we? Let's not forget that. So, I mean, who's to say we can't do something even better in 2024? It'll be hard. It'll be hard to achieve that. And that's the thing with success. It comes with a dose of expectancy in the following seasons. And we do need reality checks once in a while as Manchester City fans. And I think we need to remind ourselves of what a great achievement it was, but also look back at 2023 and think about the start of that season as well, and how there was quite a few banana skins thrown in there, which City very firmly fell on their arses by slipping on those banana skins. And it caused a little bit of a stir, doubts in the fan base, and splits and polarisation between certain groups of fans within Manchester City's fan base. And well, let's start basically, because I mean, this review is going to be a quick fire review of going through the season on the whole, and just a little reminder of how good it was, and just reflect back. And I'm just going to spill, I'm going to throw up. It's going to be mental diarrhea of 2023 from me, basically, just talking about, and floods of information and memories that I had of 2023, and what an incredible achievement it was, because this really is my first season creating properly, fully committed to Typical City and creating as much content as possible, whereas last year I was dipping my toe in the water a little bit and making after the match vlogs, basically just making a quick reaction to every match, of which it was a bit half-hearted in truth. I didn't really commit. Whereas this year, because I was going to the games most of all, it's quite difficult to make content and go to the games at the same time. Certainly the type of content that I'm making, at least, which is long-form stuff, it's hard to go to the games and make stuff as well. And certainly watch-alongs, it's quite literally impossible. I can't be in 2 places at once. So still, looking back at last season, I mean, the start we got off to in August was really good. We were beating 2-0. Beating West Ham 2-0, Haaland getting both goals with that penalty, and that memory of De Bruyne threading that through ball to Erling Haaland was just an absolute treat. What a ball that was, and the way he just like positioned his body and just realigned himself to get it onto his left foot and just push it into that far corner. Brilliant goal. And then that followed up with me and my lad. Taking my son to his first ever football match at the Etihad was a 4-0 win at home to Bournemouth. Brilliant. But I do remember the aftermath of that game. And I remember a lot of City fans were pointing the finger at Phil Foden. If you remember, there was a moment in the first half where he should have cut the ball across the face of goal, into the 6-yard box, a little cut across the face of goal for an Erling Haaland tap-in. But instead, Foden went for the shot and missed it. Everyone was on his back because right then it was the headlines were all about Erling Haaland and who he is and how it's got to give the ball to Haaland and let's see what you can do. And Foden was getting a lot of stick for not passing it to Haaland. That was then followed up by a 3-3 draw away to Newcastle, where it was like, reality check, big reality check. Newcastle were on the up and up. They'd just been bought by the Saudis. And it was a case of an amazing Trippier free kick and a comeback from Manchester City that was really good. But that game as well also included a Foden moment with Erling Haaland where he should have cut the ball across to him. And you started to see the split. As someone who was stepping into social media and doing things like that, that was new to me because I was a match-going fan who rarely heard I didn't go on to Twitter or to YouTube to hear the reactions of fans in this form, in this sort of media that we're talking about on YouTube or Instagram or Twitter or wherever you get your content from. And to see, I started to sample the divisions in fan bases and how I'm very much in the side of he's going to learn. Foden's Manchester City player, but let's not write him off. But I remember there was loads of City fans having a go at Phil Foden and saying, right, drop him then. If he's not going to pass the ball to Erling Haaland, put him on the bench. He should be punished for things like that. But he stuck with him, Pep Guardiola. And then we all remember, a month later or so, that Foden and Haaland just linked up together and both got a hat-trick in a certain Manchester derby. I remember that very well. So I think we do need a reality check because I'm seeing it again this season with fans so quick and reactionary judgments of players that, I mean, some of them are not even given 45 minutes before they're being judged right now. Matheus Nunes springs to mind, for example. Kovacic a couple of weeks ago was being told it is a disaster. What a terrible transfer he is. Matheus Nunes played... What's he played for us? He's barely played 300 minutes for Manchester City and he's being written off already by some fans. And we do need a reminder of these things take time and moments like that. I just described to you how the connection between Foden and Haaland wasn't quite there at the beginning, but then bang, a hat-trick each in a Manchester derby. Come on, it doesn't get much sweeter than that. August then followed up with a Crystal Palace result where we went 2-0 down. That also sounds very familiar. City going down and having to turn the game around again. How many times have we done that this season? Again, similarities to last season. I know it's not a case of history doesn't guarantee the future. I understand that. But what my point is there's just little signs, little patterns that... Although I don't think City are going to get a treble, I'm going to be blunt with you. I don't think we're going to get a treble again this season, but I don't see why we can't have a great season and collect more silverware again. Even if it's just the Premier League, I'll be buzzing if it's just the Premier League. I'd love to get the 4P or a Champions League again. If it was just the Champions League, equally buzzing. I would love it. I would absolutely love it. But it's just a case of there is clearly similarities and little moments that seem familiar to last season compared to this season as well. That was then followed up after the Erling Haaland comeback. That was the game where we've all seen that iconic imagery now of Erling Haaland getting that goal to turn the game around, running behind the goal and just jumping at the camera and just grabbing the side of the camera and just shaking the screen like that and just going, oh, like that iconic imagery that's seen all over the world now. You think Erling Haaland, you think of him staring down the barrel and coming back and pointing down the camera lens, and who knew that he would go on to do what he did in that season? And that was just him saying, look who's here. Guess who's arrived? The big man, Erling Haaland, and he's here to make a statement for Manchester City. And he absolutely lived up to it. He did not let us down in the slightest, did he? What a season he had. That was then followed up by an Erling Haaland hat-trick to prove my point against Nottingham Forest to make it 6-0. And then another little sneaky result popped in September. We drew 1-1 to Aston Villa. That lovely Kevin De Bruyne across for like a jumping side foot volley at the back post from Erling Haaland. I remember that really well. Lovely finish, but ended in a draw. That was then followed by another comeback in the Champions League. Prior to that, we beat Sevilla 4-0, so a little statement in the Champions League was made there. I remember that very vividly. But we go 1-0 down to Borussia Dortmund, and the big man again cropping up with a lovely, getting on the end of that lovely cross from João Cancelo. I mean, what a cross that was from the outside of his butt, whipping it into that far corner there. And Erling Haaland was there with the most unbelievable bit of agility and dexterity and just athleticism to get up that high and volley it in a position where most people wouldn't even dare to head it. He's tapping it in with his foot. Like ridiculous athleticism from Erling Haaland. And then we started to make some statement wins. That your derby, the 6-3, that was a real moment for me where I thought, wow, that's a really big win. We backed that up with 5-0 against Copenhagen, another Champions League statement win. Then we beat Southampton 4-0, albeit Southampton ended up getting relegated. 4-0 against a Premier League opposition is not something to turn your nose up at. At the end of the day, that's a really convincing performance. That's one thing I want to see this season a little bit more. High scoring performances. We need to wipe the floor with someone because our performances deserve it. So far, we're looking at 2-0 against Sheffield United and 2-1 against Sheffield United. In both those games, no one would have argued if they ended up both 5-0 Manchester City. No one would have argued. No one would have said a word. We got 30-plus shots against Sheffield United at Bramall Lane. We got close to that against them at the Etihad, but we only scored 4 across 2 games against them. I say only, still, we scored 2 in one game and 2 in the next game, but still against Sheffield United, that could have easily become a 10-plus goal difference for Manchester City in those games, and no one would have argued. And I'm waiting to see it happen this season, for someone is going to get a beating, is going to get an absolute spanking. I promise you it's going to happen. And hopefully the little signs, little crumblings of our rivals, in particular Arsenal right now, as well as Manchester City, showing signs of belief and remembering, muscle memories kicking in, the muscle memory being linked to 2023. I remember how we win games again. I remember how we win trophies. Let's do that again. And that was backed up by statement wins. Unfortunately, though, that was then followed by a 1-0 loss away at Anfield with some Cancelo defending that was just a suicide defending on the halfway line against Mo Salah. I remember that. That was awful. And Cancelo has proven that season that he's not the man for us in terms of defending. Off the pitch antics as well was left a bit of a sour taste in your mouth after watching him play some fantastic stuff. But his attitude was questionable, is being polite. That followed up with he gave away a penalty to Fulham, going down to 10 men. 10 men Manchester City, 1-0 down to Fulham. We turned the game round and win 2-1. But Cancelo didn't make life easy for us in that game. This was all pre-World Cup, and that's mad to even consider that Manchester City won the treble in the season when a World Cup was slapped right bang in the middle. That's a disadvantage for everybody. Everybody's disadvantaged at that point. And I always argued that I remember certain City players didn't seem to be quite at the races before the World Cup. I think Ruben Diaz was really sloppy before the World Cup. You can't blame these players for having one eye on the World Cup at that point because they want to protect their bodies. They don't want to miss out on an opportunity like a World Cup and get injured. So having it in the Premier League season affected the Premier League season because before it, there were players going in 80%, 90%, which is a shame. A real shame, but after the World Cup, they came back firing. But it was a sour note that we left on because we ended up losing to Brentford at home, and that was it. Premier League done, for the next 2 or 3 weeks, off to the World Cup. And City fans are sitting there like chomping at the bit, like we need to get back. I don't want the World Cup now. We've just lost. And I hate losing and having a big time frame of waiting until we can next get back on that pitch. I hate it. I can't stand it. And we had to deal with it. I enjoyed the World Cup. Don't get me wrong. It was an incredible World Cup. I really enjoyed watching it. But it was just frustrating that we left the Premier League back in the UK with a loss. And then we came back and we threw in some really convincing performances when we came back during the December-January period as well, beating Liverpool in the Carabao Cup, a cup we didn't go on to win, unfortunately, but still, knocking Liverpool out was enjoyable. We beat Chelsea in the Premier League and the FA Cup back-to-back fixtures against Chelsea. At the time, we didn't know Chelsea were a bag of shit, but they turned out to be, at the time, we took it like, oh, that's a good win. Maybe not as good as it looked in hindsight, because Chelsea are just, what are they, now 10th in the Premier League? They look like a bang-average Premier League team. Then we followed that up by knocking Arsenal out of the FA Cup, a cup we did go on to win, can't forget that. And then we drew at home 1-1 to Everton. That was a game that was very reminiscent of everything we've been doing this season. It was a case of we dominated against Everton. We battered them in that game, and it took a Damari Gray absolute wonder goal in like the 80th minute, just whipping it past Edison right into the top corner. A point that was very fortunate for Everton. And it kind of reminds me of this season, looking at it this season and thinking that was, you know, a totally dominant performance. And it was just one opportunity at the other end and they get a point off us and we drop two. Really infuriating. But we've seen results like that this season. This season we're seeing results like that. Hopefully we can turn it round. The Palace game springs to mind. That was that sort of game, except it was a mistake rather than a piece of wonderful skill from Damari Gray. February rolled by. Loved February, loved it. It didn't seem like it was the greatest start because we got off to a very standard 1-0 loss away to Spurs. That's to be expected. We always do. When do we ever beat Spurs at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium? It's our bogey ground and we lived up to our expectations of losing 1-0 away to Spurs. Nothing new there. Nothing new there whatsoever. But what was new was the morning after. 115 charges levelled at Manchester City, landing right on the doorstep, packaged, signed, sealed and delivered from the Premier League. Here are some 115 charges you have to gobble up and absorb and enjoy. And they thought they were hurting us, but they were not hurting us. They were igniting us. They were the catalyst to Manchester City's success that season, because we went on an undefeated streak that you would not believe. We didn't lose a game until the very last game of the season in the Premier League after those charges. And that was when the Premier League had already been wrapped up. We'd already won the Premier League at that point, and we fielded a weakened team against Brentford, who did the double over us last season. Last game of the season, and we lose it. And we lost it to Brentford. Other than that, between February the 6th to the end of August, all of that time was undefeated. Not a coincidence. Not a coincidence that rallying cry from Pep Guardiola, that interview that he gave, I mean, I was on the edge of my seats with goosebumps, mate. That man could lead a country. Forget football clubs. Pep Guardiola could lead a country. And I mean that. He's an absolute genius. It wasn't until the 28th of May that we lost against Brentford. That's insane. And that followed with some really notable results in there as well, with 7-0 against RB Leipzig, Haaland scoring 5, 6-0 against Burnley. And I mean, I know it was Burnley in the Championship at the time, but I was worried about Vincent Kompany, the company factor, because they were tearing the Championship apart at that time. And it was a fixture that was a little bit of a potential banana skin, but we made it look easy. We picked that banana skin up and put it in the bin. 6-0. Game done. Another FA Cup, really convincing performance. We beat Liverpool 4-0. We went 1-0 down. And you don't really turn games round like that in the big games. 1-0 down to Liverpool, and we win 4-1. And we battered them after that. We battered them. And then 3-0 against Bayern Munich in the Champions League. And that resulted in Leroy Sané and Mane having a punch-up and kicking the shit out of each other. As a result, arguing, Manchester City getting under people's skin to the point where they start hitting each other. Insane from Manchester City. Incredible. Then we dismantled Arsenal, 4-1, a Kevin De Bruyne masterclass. That goal, that first goal where he just brings it down, Haaland flicks it on, gets De Bruyne through, and he says he's through, he's still got a player to beat. He ghosts past, I think it's Saliba or Gabriel, and just buries it, bottom corner. Kevin De Bruyne just still creating nightmares for the Arsenal fans. They can't sleep when they think of Kevin De Bruyne. And guess who's back? Guess who's back this season? And at that point, we'd won the league. Maybe not mathematically, but up here. We'd won the league in here. We'd beaten them. We'd won the war. We'd won many battles against Arsenal that season. We'd already beaten them numerous times. But up here, the war wasn't won. And in that game, it was done. They were finished. The trenches, they were dead. There were Arsenal bodies everywhere in the trenches of the Premier League 22-23 season. And we destroyed them mentally at that point. This then followed June, where Manchester United tried to stop the treble. They promised us, didn't they? They made promises. They aren't going to... If we have the chance to stop them winning the treble, then they're going to do it, they said. They're going to stop us. 12 seconds in, boom, Gundogan bolt. Absolute screamer. With all those little bucket hats, 30,000 bucket hats of Manchester United fans staring at the Ilkay Gundogan, just rifling one into the top corner, and little trickles of tears, and they can just take their bucket hats off and wipe them away with those three little bucket hats. They all look like a big group of bellends sat there, just like hoping that they could steal something from that game. They were gifted a penalty from a Jack Grealish handball, gifted, and then it wasn't done, and then Gundogan pops one in to make it 2-1. FA Cup in the bag. I mean, that was as satisfying as it gets. I think the Champions League at that point, I felt it was a given. I felt going into that Champions League final, because of the FA Cup final, forgive me if it sounds arrogant, and I don't care if you do think I sound arrogant, because arrogance is something I'm going to say for another day. And I'll talk to you about Manchester City and why we're entitled to be a little bit arrogant once in a while, considering what we've had to put up with for the last 2 decades from those across the road. I think Manchester City fans are entitled to be a little bit arrogant once in a while now. You know, it's football. You celebrate when you win, and you take the stick on the chin when you lose. And we've done nothing but win lately, so it's time to have a little bit of enjoyment in our systems and a little bit of arrogance once in a while. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. We followed that up with the 1-0 immortalisation of Rodri. Forever. A hero. A legend of Manchester City. Incredible. A moment that's forever going to be ingrained in my memory. A moment that's just ridiculous. It just doesn't sink in. There are no words to describe that feeling when Rodri scored. I mean, I didn't know what to make of it. And I'm not quite sure, because I felt when that goal goes in, even when Inter Milan were peppering our goal with shots and Ederson was saving it, Ruben Diaz was getting his head away and clearing it away off the line. Those moments, I just felt like we're going to do it. We're going to do it. There's nothing stopping us. It's already written. And you combine all of this stuff together, and then you add the cherry on the cake of August. We beat Sevilla for the Super Cup to win on penalties. We didn't play that well, but we got the job done. We beat them on penalties. 2 weeks ago, we were crowned champions of the world. I can't stop coughing. As you can tell, I'm still not 100%. But still, I could not believe that season was crowned quite in the way it was. And the calendar year was crowned quite in the way it was. You ask Steven Spielberg to collect his best Hollywood script writers all in a room, and then you present this 2023 as a script to say, go and write a football movie for one club. Go and write a success story of one club with throw in some drama in there, accusations of cheating, all that stuff, financial doping. Throw all that in, okay? And then what can you come up with? What's the best amalgamation of success story that you could come up with as a group of the greatest Hollywood script writers? You present that to them, they'd say, piss off. That's too unrealistic. There's no way, no one's going to believe it. It's too unrealistic. It's not fathomable. It doesn't make sense. It's too insanely, it's too Hollywood. It's too much of Hollywood, if that makes sense. But we did it. We actually did it. And I cannot believe it. I still can't believe it. And I don't think our rival fans can believe it. They don't want to. And I don't blame them for not wanting to, because they've had a tough time supporting their teams, especially the likes of Manchester United and Liverpool, who are so used to winning. And they've just had to sit there and take it right up the arse. They've had to accept it. And it's been an absolute joy. An absolute joy. What a season, what a year 2023 ended up being for Manchester City. That completes the 2023 review. I've struggled to do this, so I hope you appreciate it. I'm going to go and have a nice big swig of Corvonia and a nice drink of water as well to relieve my throat, because it's on fire right now. It's on fire. I'm struggling. But Blues, get in the comments below. What is your standout moments of 2023? I know the trophies and stuff, but were there any little moments that really stood out? A particular game, a particular moment in a game, or something that highlighted to you with 2023 that this season is going to be historic and one to remember? Get your comments in the comment sections below. I do really, really want to hear them. Happy New Year to everyone as well. I hope to keep this going. Typical City into the new 2024, see how much we can grow this channel. It really helps with you guys who've been incredibly supportive throughout this year, so a massive thank you to you guys as well. Please drop a like on this video. Typical City is the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.
This is typical